Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over the top 10 best meta decks as we're approaching Milwaukee Regionals. Now, we've already seen the results of Sevilla Special Event and Johannesburg Special Event alongside Atlanta Regionals and Monterrey Regionals, so we have a lot of tournament data to back up this list. The lists are available in the pinned comment. You can copy and paste those right into PTCG Live. And of course, if you need any of the cards for these decks, check out our sponsors at Kayfabe, at PTCGL Store, and of course, if you need any sleeves, we always use katanas here at the Shuffle Squad. If you haven't already, put your best guesses for the top 10 decks in the comments, or just let me know if you like the video or not. Really would appreciate some comments in there because it does help boost the YouTube algorithm. Let's jump into our number 10 pick. And of course, we're going to be unleashing our new setup for the top 10s. So I hope you're ready for an awesome overlay that I've created for this video. All right, let's jump into it. Kicking off our list this week at number 10 is going to be Raging Bolt with Teal Mask and Noctowl. Now, this is the most successful build of the deck in our Journey Together format, between the Raging Bolt straight up Teal Mask Ogre Pawn build that we previously played with Pokestop, that's no longer there due to rotation, and of course, the Raging Bolt Belly Bolt that people always ask me questions about. When it comes down to this list, it's the one that people are playing in tournaments. It's seen success, and we've seen great heights with players like All Out Blitzel making day 2, I believe, with this exact list. We have Jamming Tower to deal with Gardevoir's presence. We have single prize card attackers like Raging Bolt and Slitherwing to deal with various situations. Again, more like trying to lower your prize card outputs, and the list just generally works. Now, it's placed a little bit low on this list this week, and that's because it's been a pretty competitive top 10 decks list. There's a lot of decks that you might not see here. Trapico's Bouffalon, not here. There was someone in the comments who was like, where's Saralech? Not a top 10 deck. There's a lot of decks that want to be in the top 10, and these are always going to be changing, whether it's different variants, different things, whatever. So right now we're kicking it off at number 10. We have the QR code in the bottom left. You can go ahead and scan that. That's going to take you to the My Limitless Deck Builder page. And then of course you can import it from PTCG Live there or make any adjustments that you need. Let's jump into our next deck. At number 9 this week, we have Enz Zoroark EX with Enz Darmanitan, Enz Reshiram, and a few other techs. Now, this is the deck that Fabian Pujol took to a top 16 place at Sevilla Special Event, and I thought that their list did it the best. They're one of the greatest players in the game. They had a top 16 finish, and you might be like, Zach, I thought you said this deck wasn't that great. Well, it wasn't particularly the greatest, but I think the thing that's changing is our format at the top of the metagame, and not to give too much information or foreshadowing, it's getting very stage 2 Pokemon heavy. So you might see Gardevoir that's won every single major event we've had in this format. It won Atlanta, it won Monterrey, it won Sevilla, it won Johannesburg. What deck beats it? Well, Enzorg might just be that Pokemon being able to copy Flame Ball Cannon with your Night Joker attack to be able to go 90 and 90, really taking off those double routes, and the aggressiveness and typing really works out well. So this is well positioned now. It might not always be well positioned, but we'll have to see how the rest of it plays out as we go forward. But right now, Enzorg seems like a decent choice. So if you haven't picked up these cards yet, I totally recommend checking out our sponsors and picking up some of the cards. At number 8, we have Goldango with the Dunsparce. Now, this is the build that seemed to be one of the more successful or popular builds of Goldango, and it was hard because we've seen other builds that play Enzorg, we've seen builds that play Scizor, we see builds that play just none of the above. It's just straight up Dango. I think that the Dunsparce one is probably the more popular build, and that's why I decided to go with it at number 8 this week. We're still going to be popping off all those energies with Make It Rain. We've just tastefully teched ourselves with Vengeful Punch for partially the Gardevoir matchup, partially Pikachu EX, and of course we have Jamming Tower again, trying to counter some of these tool cards that we're seeing, specifically Bravery Charm, or more likely Bravery Charm when it comes to the Gardevoir EX. So there's some decks that are putting some Gardevoir hate. They want to try to beat the most successful deck in our format. And I think that this deck, between having the option to attack with the Dunsparce EX to get through things like Cornerstone, or your opponent has a large bench, plus you have the Dunsparce Runaway Draw to draw cards, seems like a very successful build across the board. Personally, my favorite. Maybe I'm just a Dunsparce to Dunsparce fan. Call me silly, but I just like those wormy Pokemon Do you like them? I like them. But this build seems really well constructed as we approach Milwaukee. So maybe give it a try. Pretty cool way to play Goldango EX. At number 7, we have EV Box. Now, this is the deck that I played to Monterey Regionals. I was able to make top 64, and I briefly edited the deck to since reflect some of the changes that I'd make as I approach Milwaukee. I think majority of the time we got it right. Between Nathan Stratford, Gabriel Smart, and myself, I think the list looks really good. I've changed a Buddy Poffin for a Brock Scouting that could allow us to grab an evolution in the middle of the game. Sometimes you draw into a Buddy Poffin under Badulok and you're like, cool, this is a dead card. At least Brock Scouting is searchable by Noctowl and it can allow us to search out basic Pokemon. I've also cut the Colorful Friends Eevee. As much as it's successful and helpful, I think that boosted evolution being able to evolve with Sparkling Crystal makes it a better addition to this deck. Overall, you're going to choose between Accelerating Energies with Flareon EX, great attacker against Goldango EX, and of course, Sylveon EX is great against those big Stage 2 Pokemon EX decks when it comes to using its Angel Light attack. So some really cool gameplay here. I know that Nathan Stratford just taught a masterclass. I actually have a class coming up on my channel as well, so check that out on my Metafy. We'll see exactly how this deck does. So if you have the EVs and you want to let them loose, they're very well positioned right now in this current metagame. At number 6, we have Joltik Box, the new deck on the block. Tyler Matthews really kind of showed the Western world that this deck rocks by making top 8 at Monterey Regionals, and it saw a lot of success in Sevilla special event in Spain. I think a lot of people are going to try to take that success or replicate that success in Milwaukee, and it's all about using Joltik, use its attack, and you're powering up your different Pokemon. We take that slowed down approach, and your opponent's probably not knocking out those 2 prizers. Then you have Iron Hands that can knock out your opponent's little basic Pokemon. Maybe Pikachu can knock out their big HP Pokemon. This is a kind of hybrid build from what I've seen for some successful runs at some online tournaments, but most of the Joltik box lists are looking pretty similar across the board. I know I just picked up a Galvantula for myself, so I'm able to build this deck in real life. I think it's a really cool one, so I think we're going to see a little bit more of this, but maybe not. I don't know. It's a cool deck though. At number 5 this week, we have Dragapult EX with Monkey Dory and friends. Seems like this build has been pretty successful at online tournaments, at regionals, special events. But I think with Dragapult Dusknoir, it's going kind of taking a step down. This build I feel is really strong in Dragapult Dusknoir. So his Dragapult Dusknoir might not be as good as other decks in this format. Or maybe it is, maybe it's not, but maybe it's not, right? Wink, wink. We'll see exactly how this deck is connected to that. So I think with Dragapult Dusknoir, in my opinion, taking a step back, this deck's also going to take a step back. So that's why it goes from being like a top 3, top 4 deck to being a 5th place deck. I think we'll still see a lot of players playing it. I think we'll still see a lot of players playing Dragapult Dusknoir, but this build is just more of a teched out version for Mirror when it comes to Dragapult mirrors and having answers, of course, to a lot of the metagame. Incredibly powerful deck, incredibly skill-based deck, but we'll have to see how it plays out at Milwaukee. Maybe we'll see some of the same players like Tanner Hurley, who I think this is exact 60, playing it at Milwaukee. Maybe we won't. So right now it's at number 5, definitely could scale in the future. And like any of the decks on this list, it's always subject to change on a week-by-week basis. So don't necessarily be like, hey, this deck's falling off because it's at number 5, or maybe because a deck made in the top 10 last week, you're like, where is the deck? Things change all the time when it comes to the metagame, and there's minute changes every day. At number 4, we have Terrabox. Now, Terrabox is a deck that previously was number 1 at the beginning of the format, and now it's getting to the point where it's kind of crawling back there, but for different reasons. For similar reasons as Enzoric, having Wellspring Ogerpon to knock out 2 of your opponent's single prize card Pokemon really can be a strong point for this deck, and having that as an option seems fantastic alongside all the other options this deck has. With Shaman coming out in our Destined Rivals set, that's going to be like bench barrier Manaphy. Really, I think a lot of people need to get this Wellspring or these sniping combos out of their system and start trying to tackle those stage 2 Pokemon decks before they finally evolve. And once they do evolve, that's when you can try to knock them out with something like Pikachu EX. But you can see that this deck's also taking the approach of a lot of other decks. It's playing Jamming Tower and has some cool text to kind of master the format in itself. I think it's a pretty cool way to be playing Terrabox. I really have been enjoying this list, and we've recently played some gameplay with this on the channel, so be sure to check that out. Played against Ethan's Typhlosion, but it's the exact same list. At number 3, we have Goldango EX with Dragapult. So why not combine Dragapult, one of the best decks in the format, with Goldango, one of the best decks in the format, to make a best deck sandwich? You can see that there's a lot of other elements when it comes to playing this deck, like the Genesect that we saw in the Dragapult variant, and we also see Dragapult cards and all that cool stuff. Overall, I think this is a really cool way to be playing the deck. A lot of the times you're going to just be using Dracloak the same way that you'd be using Dunsparce to keep them in play. And you also have the option to attack with Dragapult, since we have all those different energies that we can play when it comes to building this deck. I think we're going to see a lot of players play this. It's been one of the most successful Goldango Dragapult builds. We saw it do quite well in Monterey Regionals. So I think some of those same players might try to replicate their success in Mexico in Milwaukee. It wouldn't be surprised if this was spiking the tournaments. And I like, as much as I like the Goldango to Dunsparce build a little bit more personally, this is the more successful build between the two, and it's the most successful Goldango build that we have right now in our format. So we'll have to see, will the success be replicated from Mexico? We'll have to find out. I think it will. At our runner-up pick of the week at number 2 is going to be Dragapult EX with Dusknoir. Now, I think this is the most popular way to be playing Dragapult, and as much as I said that this deck's kind of taking a step back, took a step back from number 1 to number 2, okay? It's not the number 1 deck of the week. It hasn't been in a little bit, but it's probably the most popular deck right now in the format. Being able to use Phantom Dive plus Dusknoir is absolutely fantastic, because you can place damage counters however, and you just sit there and go badoo, 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 until you basically set up an impenetrable board state where you're able to win the game. I think this is probably just a perfect build of the deck right now, and as the deck continues to see success, we'll have to see if it lands at number 1. But I think Dragapult in general is just a strong choice. Same thing with Goldango in general. It's just a strong choice. You can see there's a lot of repeat when it comes over to these top 10 best decks lists, but we got to go with the results. We got to go showing the people the best decks possible. But this deck is not our number 1 deck of the week. I'm sure if you've already been listening up to this point, you probably know what the number 1 deck is. But if you haven't already, put your guess for the number 1 deck of the week. And that deck is going to be Gardevoir EX takes the top spot. It's our number 1 deck of the week, and this is Brent Tonnisson's build that won Monterey Regionals. It also was the exact same deck list that won Sevilla the following week later, and I think he kind of cracked the code on just consistency for research, for Iono. None of this Enzoric kind of gimmick that we saw Henry Chow play. Not to say that it's bad in any means, it's just typically better to have a straight up consistent deck list. I think Brent really solved Gardevoir in a lot of cases. Maybe we could see some adjustments, but with it already winning 2 majors in this format, it's the most successful build of Gardevoir that we have. And I think Gardevoir, as much as I thought the deck might have died, it's not dying. The deck is on top. If anything, it's easier to play, more successful, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of it. So if you're a Gardevoir player, expect a few mirrors. If you're not playing Gardevoir, expect to play against a few Gardevoirs. That's just top deck life, right? We have the best decks, people want to play them. But if you're missing any of these cards for these decks, check out our sponsors at Kayfabe Cards, PTCGL store for online code cards, and of course, be sure to use Ultimate Guard sleeves whenever possible. Let me close things out. That's what we got going on for our video today. I hope that you've enjoyed learning more about the top 10 decks this week. We'll see how the metagame changes after Milwaukee Regionals. We've got a few regionals left in our Journey Together format. I've already started covering some Destined Rivals content, so I'll have to see how that all plays out. But it's looking like some pretty cool content for all of y'all. If you're trying to hit me up for some coaching, go to metafy.gg/@ZachLesage. Totally would love to help you on your Pokemon journey, whether you're preparing for any of the upcoming events for the rest of the season or trying to improve your game in general. All that sounds awesome, and we'll have more great videos starting next week. Have a great weekend. If you're going to Milwaukee, best of luck, and we'll catch up with all y'all soon. Peace out and have a great day. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes.
Tabi no hajimari wa tsune ni michi e no ippo de aru. それは闇へと続く。初めの一歩を踏み出すには勇気がいる。そして旅の終わりには旅を始めた時の自分とは別人になっているかもしれない。旅に出よう。物語の次の章がお主を待っている。将軍の道を歩め。侍の箱とともに。アルティメットガードが送る冒険の第一章。刀将軍の道、近日発売。
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed the content that we have today, and maybe you'll click on one of these other videos, enjoy those videos too. If you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what video you want to watch next. Until next time, we'll catch up with all y'all later. Have yourself a great day.